Hello folks, here, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to help you to build this FreeCodeCamp front-end development library project. It's called Build Drum Machine Project. So this after previously we created two different projects for this list of projects. That's the first one was build a random code machine, and second one was build a markdown previewer. And today we are going to just learn how to build a drum machine project. If you didn't watch this previous two tutorial, I will leave the URL down of this video. You can go back and watch them and then follow us on this one. The aim basically to finish all these 5 projects for front-end development libraries projects. Then this will help you to get a certificate from FreeCodeCamp. And also previously before this also actually I did another list of tutorial for responsive web design development. If we come to this tab here, so this also FreeCodeCamp responsive web design projects with around 6 or 5 different projects, and with the int then we will get a certificate. For example, if I open this here, show notification or show certificate here where they show my certificate. So basically if you follow this list of projects with the int, then you will get this certificate, and at the same time you will learn how to build this project. And also before go to next step here, as I mentioned, today we are going to actually to build a drum machine project, and this is the end product. It will be look like this one. And also it is a responsive, it should be work on mobile and also on large devices. So if I just change this to mobile screen, as you see, this is now very look very nice, and also responsive work is good on mobile devices. How we can test this one? So let me just take it back to normal desktop, and we can press this, we can hear sound. Each letter will represent a sound, and also we have the volume control. If we reduce the volume, if you see the volume now is go down, if I increase it, will increase up, and also will show the volume here on this text area. And also you can turn off and on the power. Basically if I turn off, then I cannot hear anything, and if I turn it on again, I can hear again that it's working. And also I can change the group of the sound. Basically if I press this one, see this sound, if I change the group of sounds, this should be now changed, as you see. So this is the new group of the sounds. And the second also feature, we should use the keyboard key to play this one. If I press A, this now is the keyboard. As you see here, this is a mouse away. Just pressing the keyboard. This is A, and then Q, E. And also I can change again, here's the group of this sound, and try also use the keyboard. And also I can again actually control the volume, and you can increase it down and up level. So this all requirement by FreeCodeCamp website, and to get this pass. And also we can actually select this menu and then select from this drop list here drum machine, and then press test. That's it. So basically 8 out of 8, so our test is passed. And let's go directly building this. And actually before go to this and building this, as I mentioned earlier that I did a tutorial for this list of responsive web design projects. You can visit my channel here, and on the main page you can find this playlist for around 5 different projects, so for responsive web design projects, and then you can follow them. So stop talking and let's go and start writing the code. If we press this link here, it will open this new tab, and these are around 8 different user story here. We have to follow them so we can have this test pass. So basically first let's start by opening a new codepen by pressing this icon, or let's just go back and open this in new tab instead of at the same place. Right click and then new tab. Then when you come to here, so this is your codepen account, you can just press in your icon here or your logo, and then select new pen. And here where we are going to start writing our project. On HTML area where we can add the HTML and CSS, we can add the CSS. I didn't mention actually today we are going to use React hook to build this project. As they mentioned here on the title, this is a front-end library. So React.js is a front-end library. We are going to use React hook to build this project. So if we come back again here on this JavaScript section where we are going to write the React. So let's start writing the code. Let's start basically on HTML. We are going to have one HTML element which will be called div and with an ID called app. Let's for now close the CSS section. We are not going to add the CSS in this point. Before add any code here, we need to press this icon, setting icon, and we need to select here on JavaScript processor. We are going to select Papil. This will help us to transform the React code to be understandable JavaScript code to the browser. So the browser by default will not understand React code. So we'll use Papil to transform React to JavaScript code basically. And what next we need to do here at the end here, we need to add two packages. First one will be called React. Let's search for React, this one, first one. And second one will be React DOM, -DOM, so that we can use it to populate the data on the DOM, and then save and close. So now we have these two packages here, and let's create a simple component called app. Here we can just return like just h1 for example for now. Inside just call it hello world. So now we created the component. This component is not rendered. We need to show that on the DOM. We can call just this DOM package here, and then dot render. And this render has two params. The first param will be our component, app component, and second param will be a selector. For this ID we need to select it by using JavaScript selector. So if we save it, get element here double E, it should be single E, and save it till we have an error. Let's see where the error is. It should be return misspelling, and save it. Should be that it. So now we should see hello world here at the bottom. Yeah, here we are. So that our project now is running. Next step, we need to go and follow the first user story of this. The first user story, we need to have an element or a container with an ID called drum machine or drum machine ID. And if I come back again here and then just I'm going to take this out, all of this, I'm going to add a div element, and this div just we can close it here and give it ID. So basically this now will not show anything because I removed the text, but let's also show the test icon here, and then we can start test step by step. So if I come back again here at the end here, they're giving us this URL. We can use it to show the test icon. Can copy this and come back here on this JavaScript setting icon. We can press, and as you see here, this add another source. We can press it and then add this here. Let's just save it. After save and close, as you see here, now we have this icon. If we press this icon and try to press run test, as you see, we have 1 out of 8. So 1 out of 8, that because we just got this first test correct, and that is passed. Should be wrap everything. And what's the next step? Next step, we should build a keyboard and build also a control component. As you see, if you go to original project here again, so this project here, this part here will be the keyboard, and this part will be a controller. So let's start by building this keyboard. And before this app component, let's call a keyboard component. Let's call it keyboard. We didn't create it yet. We just are going to create it. And at the top here, I'm going to just call const create a keyboard component. And inside this keyboard, we should get a list of data to be rendered inside here. And I'm going to bring actually a data that I just got it also from FreeCodeCamp for displaying the sound. If I come back again to here, as you see, when I press here, there is a sound is coming. This sound data, I just got it from FreeCodeCamp project as I built, and we can use the same basically data. So it's not a big deal actually. You can use it. So we can just give more space here and showing you the data. So it is an array of object, and each object will be represent a sound. And that sound has a key code. So this will be when you press, for example, on your keyboard, on your laptop keyboard, then this will be matching your key that you're pressing basically. For example, when you press a Q key on your keyboard, that will fire a key code with the number is 81, and same for other keys. So the first one, as I mentioned, is just representing key code, and the second one is the key itself, and the third one, this ID just will be displayed, or this is the name of the sound, so this represents the name of the sound, and the URL, so this when it will where it will access the sound itself. Basically, as I mentioned, this is a FreeCodeCamp sound, so basically as you see, this is going to this domain FreeCodeCamp Drum, then the name of the sound. So this list of them, so we have two groups of this sound, as you see on the original here. When we press this change sound, it will switch between two groups of sounds. I'm going to bring also the second group so that we can have both of them. If I just added new line here, and just the same, just with the different sounds. So now we have two groups here. So how we can start writing this or create our keyboard component? We can start just by calling, for example, directly this first group. By now, let's show this or add this first group and try to map over all of them. Basically, if we start by this one and just let's say return, and then first group sound dot map, and this will be list of array, and then to return, for example, sound. Inside here we need to render, for example, HTML audio. So then inside here we need to return HTML audio, and that HTML audio I'm going to wrap each one of them by a button, and this button just I can style it later to look nice, and also you can click over that button and then we'll fire the sound. So we created the button, and inside this button I'm going to have an audio, and that audio with the source, and this source is coming from this sound.url, and also I can have an ID and class name. So before adding that, the ID and class name, just let's show this and adding this and save it. So now should have this list of as you see, list of button here at the bottom, but they doesn't appear or doesn't look nice. So because we need to also display the name of this name of this sound by just opening here curly braces and then call sound dot if you remember, if I open this again, here will be dot key, so the name will be just key, and save it. So we should see here now list of letters instead. Yep, so that is, so nothing is happening, but we have them. And if we go back again here to the user story, the second user story here, we should have each sound that we press on it should have this ID called a drum pad or a class. It's not ID. If I come back again here and try just add a class to this button we created here, call it class, because it's React we are going to call it class name, and then will be just a drum pad. And so now if we press this here, the test, let's just have more space and hit the run. Woohoo, now we have two. So because now we did the two actually requirement that's asked by FreeCodeCamp here, and this is a first step. And next step, let's go again, see what else we can do here. Each audio should have this ID. If I come back again, this audio, let's add an ID to this audio, and this ID will be basically just sound dot key. So the key, because it's different for each sound, and we can use it later to access this audio on the DOM, and then we can control the sound and playing it. And we should have a class called clip for this audio, as also it has an ID. Let's add this clip class. If I come back again, the same audio, we should give it a class and it will be clip. And let's try the test again and make sure it still is working. We didn't break anything. And now see, we have 3 out of 8. So because we got this 3 user story correct now, so what we need to do next, we need to listen to a sound basically when we press let's just take this out. When we press here on this icon, we need to listen to a sound basically, and how that can be worked. So on here an app component, we can create a function. Let's just create a new one, call it play. We'll expect a key. Here we are going to first to access or to select this icon, any one of this icon, for example, or any one of this sound button, or key. How we can do that? Let's just create a variable here, call it audio, and this audio will use a document get element by ID, and the ID will be this key. Basically we pass down here to this function. When we call the play, we'll pass it as a param, and now we access the audio, control the time of it. We need first to set this time, the current time, to be 0. So every time it will be start from the initial point, so it will be dot current time equals 0. Just this for to initiate, to make the default current time always will be a 0. And what else next we need to do? We need to play the sound. Basically that how to play the sound will be just audio dot play, and play it will be a function. So this is a play function we created, and we can pass this play function as a props down to this keyboard, and this is a play. And if we go back again to this keyboard here, we can access it as a props. So basically it will be visually like this, props, and then here on this button we can add on click in this button, then it will try to call prop dot play function. So because we are using E6 syntax here, I'm going to destructure this props. Instead of that, I'm going just, because as you see this is an object, we can destructure it like this and just access play directly here without using props. We can remove props from here. So this is nice for actually reading and makes the code nicer. That should be now fine. And now when we press, we don't hear anything. Let's see, we misspelled here. Yeah, document and save it, because we call this play function here. As you see, we pass this play, but we do not pass this key. So basically it doesn't understand where is this key coming from, so we need to pass this key down from this on click here. How we can do that? We can turn this as a callback function here inside, just like that, and we can call again this play and pass down again the key, where the key is coming from. So basically it will be sound.key. That's it. So if I try now, if we save it, let's create the console log and try to press. Here we are. So this is the sound is coming now. We can press icon and we can hear a sound. So before we go to the next step, as you see, as we destructure the props here, also we can destructure this sound here. We can just open the braces and create the brace inside, and then we can destructure key URL, and now we can just remove this here sound.key just to make it nicer and more readable. And same here, sound.key, and here sound.url. There is an error, we missed something here. Let's see, this will tell us where the error. Yeah, this here sound is not exist, will be just key. Let's save it. Next step, before go to controller, we need also actually to, when we press the browser, or when we press the keyboard key, also listen this. So now as you see, when I press, nothing has happened. How we can do this one? So to enable the keyboard key, and when we press them, and then to have this sound of this button instead of click them on manually using the mouse. So we need to actually to refactor this component called keyboard to another component, to have another child component. So basically, because as you see here, we have multiple key here, we map over this array, and this multiple key, we cannot control all of them at the one time. So we need to have another small component for each one of this button, and then we can control that by using the keyboard key. Let's just create a component, call it const, and the component will be keyboard key, simple component. And inside here, I'm going just to remove all of this button here, and just going to return it here. Inside here, I'm going to add it, and I'm going to call this component I created here. So this is just refactoring this component here. And actually, because this is let's make a self return. I don't need this return. Can call it like that. So as you see, this component will expect this play function, and also it will expect key and where this key is coming from, and this URL. So we need to pass them down as a props to this new component we just created. We get this key function from top layer as a props. We can just pass it down again. This is a props. We can pass it down to keyboard key component here. We can then access it. We can destructure this as a props, as I mentioned earlier. And now what else is missing? This URL and this key. Now instead, we don't need to destructure this here. We can just call it sound again as it was before. sound, and we can pass it again also as a props down to this child component sound. And now we have sound, and also we can actually destructure this sound to be look like this. So this also will do the same job basically if I just clear that and save it. So now everything should be work as it was. So this sound basically will be an object, and now how we can actually just access this without doing here like sound.url, we can just access it directly like that. And if I press, still should be work as it before, nothing will happen. I just refactor this component, and after refactoring, because it's a single a button for each of this sound, then I can control the keyboard key. So when I press on my laptop keyboard, for example, Q key here, for example, or C button on my keyboard, then I should listen to this sound. So this when I press now by the mouse. Let's create a React use effect. So this when the component will mount, it will add an even listener for each one of these keyboard key. Let's call React dot use effect, and this will be as a callback function, and here add comma on this square bracket, which means just call this only when the component mounted. And inside here we are going to call document dot add event listener, and then even listener as a function, and it will listen when a key is pressed down, will be keep a key down, and when a key press double O and a key press down, then we'll have a callback function, or instead of the callback function, it will call another function called handle key down. This is not exist, we are going to just create it, and let's just have more space here to make this more readable. And let's see, need to create this function here because it not exist before this. Let's just create another function, call it handle key down. For now, just let's add this the empty function. Now just we initiating here, so when this component is mounted, it will call this function whenever any button is pressed on my keyboard. So for example, if I press any letter, it will call this function. So because of that, inside this function, I need to add a condition. I need to check if, let's just call it event. So this event has a key code. Let's say if event.key code, if this event.key code will be camel case, if this event.key code equal to this, see this also, this sound also has a key code actually. Where is this coming from? If I just scroll up and open this sound here, and see each sound has a key code. And so if this event.key code equal to this key code, then I need to play or call this play function. Call it only when it matching the correct key basically. It will not be called if not matching. Inside here, then we'll call this play, and the play function, it will expect to pass a key to this. Actually, we can pass this the key directly, we have it here, and save it. Now make sure it's reloaded. If I press A, now I'm pressing actually the keyboard. If you see the mouse here, so now the sound is working using the keyboard and using also this here by clicking on each one of them. Okay, so this first two step, well done, that's good. If we press again the test, make sure we didn't break anything. Run test, here we are, we have now 5 out of 8. Almost there, although we don't have any nice stuff here. The most styling and the touch will be that your way, you can add your style as you would like. So next we need to create our DOM control. So now we can see the, if we come back again, this is the original here, this area here, we can add this button to turn off and on the sound, and also to change this group of the sounds. Let's start by changing group of sounds, the first one. I think this simplest one we can start with. So if we come back again here, we need to create another component just after the keyboard component. Let's call it const, and then it will be just DOM control. This simple component will start just return directly. We'll open this parenthesis here. It will be self-return, and inside just will add a div, and this div also should just add a class to it, call it control, and this is just for styling, is not required by FreeCodeCamp control. And inside here I'm going to add the control that we to change the group of sounds, and that will be just a button, and just close this button, and inside this button we gonna just to add this text, and the text will be change sounds group. And also this button, it will expect a function, and also this button has a attribute called onClick. So when we click on this button, we need to change the sound or the group sound, and we can pass a function down to this onClick. Whenever you click this button, then it will try to fire that function, and the function will be just change called change sounds group. Where is this? We can pass it down actually from top level to this component here, and also because this will be as a come as a prop, so we need to destructuring it as I mentioned earlier. And now this is just very simple component. If I copy this component and just render it here after this keyboard, close the component, and now we need to pass down the function that we just expecting as a props. So let's just create this function here with after this play component, and just call const. And as you see, if I remember earlier here in this keyboard component, we got directly this list or first group of sound directly from this variable. Instead of this variable, we need to pass it down as a props. So when we change that group of sound, automatically it will change it also to this keyboard. How we can do that one? We can just pass to this keyboard as a second props after this play, just call it sound, and instead of this first group, it will be just changed to sounds, and that will break our application. This will not work because this sound does not exist. We didn't pass it down here. Let's pass here as a second props, also another one called sounds. And we don't have that. Where this sounds coming from, we need to create initial state for this sounds here, const, and here inside will be sounds, and then set sounds function. And this is how you can create initial state for any state that you need to do on React hook, and then we call React dot use state, and the initial state use state. So for now, if we just pass down this directly, this first group of sounds here, and save it, should start still work fine. Yeah, it's making here this error. So this error here just because this is misspelled use state and react.useState, and that still should be work as it was before, and will take time reload. Yeah, here we are. If I press this by using the mouse, work, and also if I use the keyboard, still is working. Okay, that's good. So now we just trying to pass the sound dynamically instead of be fixed directly to the keyboard component. And how we can change this? Still we cannot change it because if we press this change button, nothing will happen. Still the same sound. How we can change it? We need to call this set sound function inside this function here. We need first to make a condition, so to switch between group of the sounds, and I'm going to create initial variable here at the top actually before everything. This variable should be called sound group, and also I have another group called sound name. I'm going to bring them. So these two variable will help us later to display the sound name and also to pick the correct sound group. So what we are doing here, so we're just creating this variable. This is assigned to this object here, has two keys. So the first key is the first group name, or the first group sound name, and the second group sound name. And we have another also this variable here just to map over this sound name here. So it will be the first this key will be displaying this first list of group sounds, and this second key here, or this second sound name here, will display this second sound group list of groups here. So now we can access this. If I come back again to our state here, instead of adding this manually, I'm going to call that, and we also need to have another initial state for the sound sound name. So then by using the sound name, we can pick the correct group sound, or just let's call it sound type. Instead of sound, will be called sound type, and here will be set sound type, and this sound type by default will be, remove this one, will be called this header kit. So this is a sound type. This is the initial. Let's imagine this is our initial sound type we need to play. The initial sound type name. And now here we have this the sound itself, and this group sounds. Basically here this variable at the top here, group sound. For example, I need to pick this first list of sound. How I can do that one? I can call this sound group, then dot this name or header kit sound group dot header kit, then it will return this value. And instead of doing that manual directly, because I'm going to use this one, this also will be changeable. We'll be just using this open this query or array bracket and then passing this variable down. So it will be sound group. This will be same like sound group dot this header kit, and then we'll be returning the correct value. If I save it now, let's try again to play. The sound is still working. That's good, but still nothing is being changed. And now basically when we call this set, we need to make a condition here inside this change sound group. If we need to first to check if this sound type equal or trouble equal to this name, the header kit sound, and if true, then we need to change this set sound to use the second type. Basically will be inside here, we'll call this the same, this group sound, because already we know this is the header type, then we can call this group sound directly. If we go top, the second one will be this one, a smooth piano kit, and this will be just directly dot like that. So this will switch to this sound, otherwise else we'll do the opposite. Yes, here we can, instead of this, we can just copy this name and directly can pick this one. So basically this switch, it will switch between both of them. If I press this C here, this is the sound. If I change again, see now the sound is different. If I change, press it, let's press again, nothing has happened because I need to clear the initial value, because as you see this always will be type, this here, this type, the initial type will be header kit. So I need also, when changing this group of sound, we need to change this initial value to be matching the new sound that we selected. And to do that, we need to just call this set type or set sound type before this here, because we knew that is switching here to this new sound. So we need to just call this here as set it here, and we need to also call this here on else, because we know that we are going to switch to this. We can set it back to this sound again. If I save it and let's go again and press here, let me just reload, press C, this is the sound, change the group sound, this is the new sound, change the group sound, this is the previous sound. So now that is switching correctly. So sounds now are correctly switching between list of group. Before go to further, actually this now doesn't look nice. Let me add some CSS to have to centralize all this content on this screen here. And I'm not going to focus on CSS because actually this is focusing mainly on this React code. I'm going just quickly explain what the CSS will do. Actually, I already have list of CSS here. It's not a lot here on this CSS section. Let me add this and save it. Here we are. So now we have this two group here. Still there is some key and classes we didn't add, so we'll make it look more nicer. And if come back again here at the top, I'm just setting everything margin to be 0, and the font size for the body, everything will be 24 pixel. H2 font size will be 28, and this drum machine it will have this style here and also the wrapper. So this wrapper will be for this side. If you come this, will be this wrapper for this keyboard here. And let me come back again, and this very simple CSS with background image linear gradient style will give you this very nice background, and also giving this media query. So when go to small device, we'll have one column and two row instead of like one row and two column in larger screen. And another here, this simple style for the controller, display flicks, so you can control the item by controlling the layout or for each one of them, or also for centralizing them and into middle of the screen horizontally and vertically, and also styling the button and the input, giving margin of them, all of them with the H2 also, margin button 10 pixel, and the button style also the one that now just we see. And it seems still there are some classes we didn't add to this keyboard component. So the keyboard styling, because as you see here, this is a keyboard, we didn't add any wrapper. So this keyboard here, this component here, so it will have a wrapper called div. Let's just also remove the return because it's self-return. We don't need to pass this curly braces. And let's open a parenthesis here and open inside here a div and close this div. And inside this div, let's just add our code here again, the one that we just copied. And this because is the JavaScript inside HTML, we need to wrap this with the curly braces. That should be fine now. Let me just make this look more readable. And there seems some error here. Let's see what error here. Sound is not defined. It's just a browser caching. Yep, this is a browser caching. That worked fine now. And still the keyboard is not styled because we need to pass a class to this keyboard new div wrapper. So add a class name, call it keyboard, and save it. Yeah, as you see, the style is changed a bit. This keyboard, as you see, this class keyboard is here. I come back to our styling. This keyboard here, I'm adding this to this keyboard key. So actually we're missing also another wrapper here on this section. And inside this app here, let's add another div. And this div will control first basically the layout of these two components. And inside this div, let's just add move these two components inside this div. And this div has a class called wrapper, class name wrapper. And just this part just for styling and make it nicer, look nicer. If I just save it and let's tidy the code, here we are. So as you see now that our styling work fine. Let me just make this more readable. I like to tidy my code and make it look nicer so I can recognize all line and what each one of them will do. Here we are. So saving it. So that's the style now is working fine. The style was broken, but now that's fixed because we were missing this div wrapper and this wrapper here. So if you come to the style, this wrapper basically it will control this layout and the background. If you see, this wrapper has a background. So now this is the sound. If I press E, this is the sound. If I change the group and then press different sound, again previous sound. So sound now is changing. What is missing if I come back to original here? So now we need to show, for example, when we press here, if you see now we displaying the name of this sound, and also when we press a key it will show the name of that key, and that's what we need to do. And actually before doing this, let's just run our test again, make sure nothing is break, and still that's 5 out of 8. That's good. So let's go to next step and try to show the name of the sound and the group sound. That will be on the controller here just before the button. Just before the button here, let's add a H2 and close it. And inside here, inside then we can display the name of the sound basically, and this name we can pass it down to this component as a props from top level. Sorry, not to this component here. Now we can also tidy actually this up because this props is not passed down, nothing will be shown here. And also, as you remember earlier, this name should be with a class or with an ID called display. If I come back to this user story here, let's see, where is that here? See, within a drum machine, I can see an element with a corresponding ID that assigned to display. So we need to copy this just ID and attach it to this name. So this is where we display the name. And if we save it, and now we need to pass this actually name, we don't have it. Still, if we run the test, let's see if nothing. Yeah, so now we have 6 out of 8 because just we have this user story pass basically by adding this ID, but still that is not showing actually the actual value or the name itself. Let's pass that to this as a props. Name will be name. We don't have a name here now, so where is this name coming from? So instead of the name will be actually the sound name that we have it here at the top. We have a state called, don't have a sound name here. Let's create another state called sound name. Sound set sound name, and the initial sound name will be empty. So we just can set it now empty to nothing, and we can come back again here to this component, this props. We'll just pass the sound name. Still will not show anything. If I press nothing, it will show. So we need to get the accessing the actual name. And instead of this empty one, we need to call basically C here. We can use the sounds name that group we created here earlier. As you remember earlier, we created this variable here, sounds name. So this will be more than sound with the name, and now we can call this here sound name, and then we can access the sound name by using this bracket here. And this will be, instead of sound name, will be actually sound type. How is this working? Basically, this sound type, if you just scroll up here to this state, this sound type will have this key, and sounds name here, this variable at the top, this sounds name. Then when you do like sounds name dot, for example, like this dot, this one, then will return this value for us. And whenever changing this sound type later, for example, automatically also will be whenever we're changing this sound type. If you remember earlier that we're changing the sound type here when we press this button, also it will change the sound type, and automatically it will pick then the new sound name for us here on this component by using this format. As you see now, that's down here showing this is the initial one, but if I press it, it will show the new one. If I press this again, it will show this the previous one. But when we press on a key, here we don't show that, so that still is not shown here. How we can actually control that? So if you remember earlier at the beginning of the video when we created this play component here, so this play component, when we click here, it will be calling this play, and we need, when we click, then we can change the value of this actually. So this will be sound name, then we'll call this set sound name to show this new key that we just pressed. Just before here everything, we can call that function here. So we don't have that sound, so where we can get it from, we need to pass it as a second prompt to this component. Just call it sound for now, and then this sound we can just pass it here. And let's find where we're calling this. So this play is passed down again to this keyboard, and the keyboard has this play component. If we go to keyboard component here, this play again is passed down to this keyboard key component, and inside this here keyboard key component we have a play. We call it here basically. Now we need to pass second prompt, and the second prompt or the key name, it will be actually ID, or this will be sound.id. so the sound also has an ID. I can just pass ID here. Where is this came from and how do I know it has an ID? Actually, it's not a magic. If I scroll to top here and open this list of sound, as you see, also has an ID here, and this ID will be representing the sound name. And again, if I go save it, and if I come back again here, I click, nothing is changed because we didn't actually pass the new name. If we scroll down here, if you see the name here, we're passing directly this sound group and accessing by using sound type. We need to give an option or a condition to check first. If the sound exists, try to display it. Otherwise, try to use this approach, the one that we just tried earlier. So this approach, when we click on this change group sound, will show the different click sound. And the second approach here, see to display just the sound name. And this one, it when we click on any one of this button here. If I save it and just click here, let me save it and reload it. As if you see here, this is actually when we press the keyboard. If I press the keyboard, should now changing the name. This is when I change the keyboard, the name is showing. But when we click, actually we didn't pass this second or this ID, which will be here on this on click. As you see here, on click we need to pass here, just add a comma and pass the ID also, and save it. Now should be also work both with the keyboard key and also with the mouse when we press on this button. Let's reload, see why it's not showing. Yeah, here we are. If I press, now that's changing here the text. This is the name is changing, and also when I press the keyboard, changing. When I press this change sound group, that is not changing. Let's see why it's not changing. So if you see here that when I change the group and I have this condition, the priority has this for this sound. If this sound exists, it will be still displaying that one. To fix this issue, basically we need to set this sound name to be empty. How to do that one? we can scroll top again to this sound name and set sound name. Let's just call this set sound name here on at the beginning of this change sounds group, and set it with the empty. So when this is empty, then it gives the priority for this second part, which it will be displaying the sound group. If again I press here and then try change, that's changing now. And if change, that is working. What is next part? We need to show this volume and also the text that display the volume, what is now the current volume basically. And let's go directly and do that. So just before this title, we need to give create another HTML input, which will be, just let me bring that. I have it already actually. I'm not going to type it, all of it. So let me add it just before the HT2. So this is just HTML input with default max value will be 1 and minimum will be 0, as it will give you an option to move between the scroll like by a step. See here, if I come to original, if you see moving like this is called a step. And also here this type will be range, the type of the scroll, and also the value will be the value that we pass it down as a props to this. So this will be the value coming as a prop dynamically. We can so control the volume up and down. And also this input, it will have on change handler, and this on change will call this handle volume change, and also we can pass this down as a props. So now should be still work fine. Let's see if we reload. Yeah, here we are. Now we have this button. Basically this will not do anything if even take it to the end on, or we just reduce the volume to the 0, nothing will happen because we don't control that through this key or play function. Let's control and connecting this with each other. So let's come back again to, as you see, we need volume, and also we need this new function to pass them as a props. Pass them here from this app component. Let's create another 2 props. Let's make this more readable. I'm going to break this to new line, and just here let's pass this new props and be just equal, and pass this one volume. We don't have this yet. Yeah, I know. We are going to create it. Let's start by creating the volume state. This will be just volume, set volume, and the value, the initial value will be just 1. The initial value will be 1, and also we need to create this function called handle volume change, and let's just create it here before even play. It's just empty function for now. So nothing now will happen. So basically, as you see, the initial value automatically changed to be full. So 1, it will be represent like 100%, and it will not change because I didn't do anything inside this handle volume change. I can set actually this volume change to the new value. So this handle volume change will expect event to be passed down, and this event we can actually access the value of this input value by calling this event dot target dot value. So the initial will be 0, but when we move it, now we can control it. Actually, we can move down, up, level, and the volume it will be going up, down, and but still that is not connected with this button because as you see, this 0 still is working. And how we can connect that now? We can actually create a function to control this volume for us. Yes, let's create it here after this line, const. Let's call it set key volume. So what will happen is this: we need to actually access all our sound, and each sound should be actually connected to this volume. How we can do that? Let's create an initial variable, call it audios, and this audios will be just already we have a state here called sounds. This will be this group of sounds that we need to control the volume for them, and sound dot map, and this list of sound we need to actually then this will call back function. We need to return the DOM for this list of sounds. First we need to select them by using document dot get element by ID, and the ID basically will be sound dot key. And then now we have the sound, so we need to go for each one of them will be, or audio dot for each one of these audios will be return audio. Each audio we'll set the volume for that audio. First we need to check if there is an audio. If there is an audio, then try to control the volume for that audio by just do like audio dot volume equal volume. So this audio volume equals this volume. This volume will be this state here. This is a state value. Whenever we're controlling and changing this volume, it will be automatically changing each one of this audio volume to the new one. And if we just add this, save it, and we need to call this function just inside render here after this line, open curly braces, and this will be like it will be called whenever the volume is changed. And if we just clear this console here, and now if we press, there's a sound. If I change the sound to here, this still now is not being changed. Let's see what's wrong here. If you see here, this dot key is not right, misspelled here. And if I save it, let's try again and change it the sound. Yeah, here you are, that's working. If I just reduce it to 0, nothing, it will be work. If I just increase it to top, still that's work. And also let me test that by using the keyboard button. I'm now pressing the keyboard button. If you see the sound name is changed, but the sound, we don't hear anything. If I increase the sound, yeah, that is working. Now we control the volume. That's the good part. So we control the volume, but we need to show this percentage here to show the actual volume percentage to the user to understand what the volume, what the number. And how we can do that one, we can go again to this keyboard component and just add another H2 to display this volume. Actually here just before this input, let's add H2 and close H2, and inside here I can just call it volume and then add a percentage, and I'm going to open curly braces. Then will be because the volume will be actually decimal number, I need to get integer number. How you can do that one, I'm going to call mass dot round first to round it to the integer number, and then we'll be passing value, and this volume is coming from here, and this volume is multiplied by 100, and then that it should be showing it. If I save it, as you see here, by default is 100. Now when I change it, that automatically is changing the volume, and I can see the value of this volume is working. So that now how we can display the text. Lastly, we have all before actually last things, before the last styling for each button of this, we need to display here also the power to actually turn off and on this power of for this keyboard. And let's show you, so it will be just similar to this one, off on, and when we make it off, we cannot hear anything, and also this style, and when we take it out again to on, should be hearing the sound. And let's add that also again. Let's back here and at the same place just before this H2, let's add another button. Button will be just simple button, and this button also will be just displaying here, and make a first condition. Before the condition, let's just call turn the power, and then we need to make a condition when should be called off and or on. Basically we can open a curly braces, we can check, we are going to pass props here, we can check when if the power is true, then try to show off text, otherwise try to show on text. And where does this power come from? Let's also pass it as a props down. Until now we don't have this power, we need to pass it down where we can get it from. If I come back to this app component here, this control now is expecting another props called power, and let's just move it before this one. Let's create initial state for this. We don't have any state here. Power and set power, and the initial value will be true. Now we have the power is set to true. Let's see, the error here, so this button is not closed. Let's save it. After close, now should be work fine. So now we see this turn the power off on. When we press, nothing will happen because always will be true, because here as you see this is the state we pass down, just it will be true. We need then to set this power off when we click actually on that button. And how to do that? So to control this power, we need to create a function, call it stop, const stop, to just change this value, this change of this power. It will just do the opposite of this. We'll check if is it true, it will make it false. If false, it will make it true. And how to do that one? Just do add here exclamation and then power. this will do the opposite of this value. If true, it will change it to false. If false, it will change it to true. And then we need to pass this stop function down to the control, so we can call it whenever we click on this button here, turn off and on. And now we can access it on control component. Let's scroll to control component here and pass it as a props. And on this button here, when on click on this button, then call stop function. If try come back again here, if press this, now the text is changing, but still the sound is working, although actually this is off and on. So how we can stop the sound not to work? So now we have this power. Actually instead we can pass it down also to this keyboard, and just this one, the same, this props, we need to pass it to the keyboard. If you see the keyboard now is displaying this button sound, and this each sound. Now we can access this board. We need to check the power on the keyboard component. Let's see the keyboard component here. We are expecting another power. Props, we need to check here. On this line we can check to see if the power is true. It will return the same one. Let me make this just more readable. Will return the same this one. Otherwise, if the power, for example, is false, and then it will try to do something else. Let me mark this readable. It will just return this one, but with a different value now. If the power is true, it returns this initial one, the previous one. We still works the same. If not true, then we are going to change the sound. Actually, we are going to destructuring this. Will be this object, then spreading, not actually destruction, spreading the sound, and then changing the URL value to be just hash. This hash here. So as you see, this sound, actually this sound will be this array of sound, which will be group of this list, and when we map off for each one of them, this will represent a sound, and this sound has URL, and this URL has this correct URL. When we press here, it will play that sound, but if we change this URL with a hash, then it will do nothing. If I save this now, if I save it and reload the page, now if I press the Q, it will work. If I turn off the power and I press nothing, it will work. Again, if I turn it on and try to press the keyboard, it will work. If I press it off and press the keyboard, it will not work. So now the power is work. And if now let's go to test and try again. And still we have 5 out of 8. So what is missing here, basically it will check this audio is being clicked or not, and when it clicks should be showing the same ID. For example, we are attaching to this button and we don't pass any ID to here. Let's add ID, and this ID will be the same value, or it will be the key code value that we just clicked. And this will be key code, and the key code will be coming from here. This is the key code, and if we save that should be at least. Go to next step. Let's run the test again. Here we are. That fixed all the tests basically. And this 8 out of 8, but still we didn't finish it, because as you see here, when we press, we don't have the hover effect. If you come to original tutorial here, when I press, as you see now, we have this very nice effect for this hover background color and text color. How we can do this one? To make this nice hover, when we click on each one of this button, we need to create a function just before this play function here. And already I created the function here, so it's called style active key. So this, it will expect a key, and this key will be representing, for example, or let's just call it audio for now. Key doesn't make sense. Let's call it audio and change this to audio. And this audio, basically, if you come back to this keyboard component here, keyboard key will be this audio HTML element, and then we need to access the parent of this audio, will be this button. If I just scroll up again, where we have this style active key, so we'll access the parent, which will be the button, and change the style background to be black, the opposite of the text, and the text will be white. And we need to call this function just inside the play, and just after this here set sound, and call it here. And if I save it, that should work. And when I press, seems there's an error because I didn't pass this audio. We need to pass audio as a prompt to this function and need to replace it after this line. Save it, and now when I press, still there is an error here. Cannot access audio before initialized. Where's the key? Because it seems as that wasn't saved. Let's save it and reload it again, because the order previously was different. That is working, but when I go up, is the color is not changing. So now we need to call another function. We call it deactivate, and this deactivate will be just called after 300 millisecond after this active or style active button key. Let's see where is that. Just after this here, let's create this function and let's just make this more readable. This function also will expect audio, and just we call this set time out, and this set time out will be called after 300 millisecond. Just it will do the opposite of here. It will change the color for the background to be white and for the text will be black as the initial one. So we call this as the end of the play component here, and this will be just called after 300 millisecond. And then let's just have more space and reload it. So now if I press, see, it should be changing. Nothing is work. It seems there's an error because we're calling the function but we don't pass the audio down. So that's the previous issue I did. And here we need to pass this audio as a prompt here to this function. Save it, reload, and wait for it. So when I press, here we are. That is working now. When I try, this is also when I try the keyboard. If you see the mouse here, so yeah, here we are. So finally it's working, and also the test is passed 8 out of 8 and also is responsive. And this basically is the end of tutorial. If you like it, I know it was long, but we were focusing on details on how to build this very nice drum machine. And don't forget to press thumb up and leave your comment, and also if you are new to my channel, to press subscribe button and enable the bell to get all new notification. And also we leave some recommended tutorial on the screen in front of you. You can watch that, and see you on the next tutorial.